Good morning. I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. And with me on the phone is Ian Burns from Ottawa. Morning, Ian.
Howdy ho, mate. How's it going in that sunny locale?
Vegas is going well. We got some stuff to show you near the end of this on Vegas, but we're going to kick it off here with big fires happening in Los Angeles right now. Lots of homes being lost, and you were saying a couple lives lost just in the last little bit here.
Yeah, the fire chief, I think, or sheriff or something like that, has just announced it. Yeah, but I mean, it is crazy the amount of people who are tens of thousands of people under evacuation orders, schools closed. I think it was 1,000 properties in the Palisades area destroyed, and hundreds elsewhere. And
Do you have
then
that image there,
they're saying that
Rama?
LA County, which contains 10 million people, they're saying that everywhere in LA County is at risk right now.
Yeah, there's stuff on X saying that there's no water in the hydrants and all kinds of things going on.
Yeah, it seems
Not that image, Rommel. Or
as
Rommel's
is
looking
as
for
is
an
often the
image there.
case. I'm sorry to say about the Americans, but when pressure is put on the country in emergencies, often these kind of things happen. It's quite disastrous, isn't it?
It looks like this image we're putting up from Charles Payne, if we get to it. It's from the air, and it just looks like absolutely devastating.
Yeah, and there's a video doing the rounds as well of a chap who's in his house, and he's got one of those houses where it's like windows all around, like rather than walls, and he's kind of looking at fire
Uh-huh.
in every direction around his home, and he's kind of panicking, trying to get out. I mean,
I
pretty
did see
pretty
that
scary
too.
scenes.
Yeah, really scary. Absolutely frightening. And it's what is it now? It's still January.
Yeah, but they've been in a drought for so long now, and
Yeah.
not just California, but vast sort of stretches of the western states. They really suffer with a lack of water, and obviously it's hugely controversial. I mean, Los Angeles, in many ways, their history is all about people fighting over who gets access to water,
Hmm.
and it's the same with the Colorado River as well. And you know, who knows? Maybe they will build a pipeline from the Great Lakes. Maybe we'll help them out, but they really lack water in the
Or,
Western United States.
or a desalination plant because there is a ton of water just off their shores there.
Yeah, that would work. Maybe they should ask Israel to come over and donate some of their expertise.
Hmm. Um, and then something closer to home, the migrant worker group tells of complaints about an Okanagan winery, and they were fined and banned from taking any more foreign workers.
Yeah, very rare apparently for that to happen. Well, not apparently. I mean, it is very rare. So it suggests a particularly severe in case with this particular company. Yeah.
Yeah, you can read that story on Kelowna Now. Um, yeah, I mean, the Okanagan Valley does use a lot of migrant workers, and there's been lots of rumors about this kind of stuff, and here's one that's actually turned out to be
Yeah, and
true.
there was an arrest, wasn't there, last year? When that's a case that's currently sub judice, but that was related to this kind of thing as well. I mean, some charity has come out and said, charity that sort of works on behalf of migrant workers, come out and said that the situation is inherently unjust, really, because you're in a foreign country, and you're working for somebody who gives you your money, your job, your house, and basically sort of guides you in the strange world that you're in. So it's a case of having like absolute power over someone, and it's easy to see why people think that isn't particularly healthy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people speaking out against this massive immigrant or migrant crisis now. Like talking about, like we're going to talk about this next story here, where they say our healthcare system is swamped. We're bringing in too many people, and here we have a middle-aged man dying in the waiting room in the Winnipeg ER. Um,
Yeah,
they say,
absolutely. Tragic, that, isn't it?
They say it's not unusual to wait 8 to 11 hours in the emergency rooms in the city. I mean,
Yeah.
there's reasons people go to emergency rooms, and and you're waiting 11 hours.
Well, in that
Um,
story there, it says that he was triaged and he was rated as a lower acuity patient, which
mm,
is an attempt to sound smart when you say, not in particularly dire need, not
yeah,
like the lower level of seriousness.
yeah.
And
I mean,
and it says here in this story that they can wait 10 or more hours, people in that triage category. And then obviously while he was in that category, he it says here that his condition significantly worsened and then he ultimately died.
yeah, I had a conversation with the checkout or check-in lady at the MGM here, and she was, you're from Canada. Oh, you get free healthcare there. How great that is! And I'm like, well, we get free healthcare, but access to healthcare is another thing, right? So free, but access seems to be the bigger issue here in Canada right now.
Yeah, and that is also true in other parts of the world that have socialized medicine, unfortunately.
Because in the States, if you have money or insurance, you get access quite quickly. Um,
Yeah. Well, you
so
can
some
get
in the
like
middle,
same day
yeah.
appointments and things, can't you? Like straight away be seeing, get all the kind of full body checks and things. But obviously the payoff or the trade-off is that you've got
Mhm.
to be pretty well off to be in that situation in America.
Yeah, and then moving on to Justin Trudeau, well, in the news a lot now. He's never been in as much in the news as now, and now the JCCF Canada is challenging the prorogation of the Parliament in federal court, and saying that it's unreasonable, unjust, and that was a tweet by Holly Doan, Blacklocks. I guess like that's great, but can they get a court date that makes a difference? I guess that's the bigger question, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't. I mean, who knows? Maybe, but what's happened here is perfectly legal. It's the sort of ethics, I think, behind it that are being questioned, whether or not it was the right thing to do, and maybe in future something to consider. Should it be should it be changed? The ability of the Prime Minister to suspend Parliament. I mean, it's very, very controversial and for good reason.
Even CBC had a panel on there. They were talking about it, and with Rosemary Barton leading the panel, and the three other CBC um, journalists on there were saying that now is the time for an election, not this prorogation of Parliament. And like it just makes sense to everybody, other than the selfishness of the Liberal Party and Justin Trudeau. So it just seems odd that he can ignore the wishes of, like I said, when the CBC turns on him, there's
Yeah,
something
and the
there.
Globe and Mail.
Yeah. I mean, it's just obvious, like blatantly obvious, with the threat that we're facing from the United States, and Trump tariffs, and that we need a leader that can stand up for Canada. Hey, Rosie
Well,
Barton pitched.
I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that we're under attack.
Mhm.
It's almost like a
Economic attack for sure,
quasi war-like situation.
an
And
economic war.
in that period where there's the most powerful country in the history of the world has us in their sights and threatens to destroy our economy. At
Yeah,
that moment, we're watching the Liberal Party have an argument about who's going to go and lose an election in a few months, which is the most likely outcome according to polls.
yeah.
It does seem awfully irresponsible, doesn't it?
Yeah, Rosie Barton pitched that. Well, Justin's not distracted now. He could now. He's the real leader. He can defend Canada. I'm just nobody was buying that argument.
Well, he did send a tweet out about snowballs yesterday, so I
There
guess
was
that
a
counts as defending Canada.
there was a response from Elon Musk on that. I won't repeat it, but yeah. And then Holly Doan with another tweet out there, with Andrew Scheer's comments saying that the Prime Minister must release the name of the parliamentarians suspected of acting for foreign embassies. I mean, that seems like an obvious one too. That we should know who those are if they're running for the leadership race.
Yeah, well, I mean, how many different issues are there like this where you have to say those words? We should obviously know. Like that's kind of That's the phrase of the last few years, isn't it? When it comes to a lot of government scandals.
And then interesting, CTV um, puts out a poll that says just staggering. Polls show more than half BC voters would go conservative if election were called now. Ah,
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how surprising it really is. If when you dig deep into the polls that have been coming out over the last couple of years, especially since Poilievre's, since he put his hat in the ring for the leadership of the Conservative Party, a lot of the surveys have shown that he is very popular with young people, and obviously BC, particularly the Metro Vancouver area, has quite a lot of young people, and he's also popular with like a long list of ethnic minorities, which like both of those things aren't usually true of the centre right party or the Conservative Party and at any given time. But with this current Conservative Party, that is true. And obviously BC has huge ethnic diversity and quite a lot of young people, particularly in Metro Vancouver. It's not that surprising that it would be leaning towards the Conservatives, especially when you consider that the interior, which isn't as diverse and isn't as young, has always really been conservative anyway. It's a conservative area in general. So it's kind of like the two are aligning, the two sort of chunks of BC are aligning towards the Conservatives.
right. Um, five things. You had some stuff in there that it's 8 and 10 newcomers are satisfied with life in Canada, but 29% do not.
Yeah, and I think the more the most interesting result of this poll, which was actually taken in November, I'm not sure why they sat on it for so long, but one of the most interesting things is, and again, this is borne out by loads of other surveys, which is that a huge majority of immigrants to Canada think that Canada has let in too many immigrants, which
Yeah,
is again one of those things that usually that's not. It's just it's at least the stereotype is that that isn't true, but the data seems to show consistently that immigrants themselves think that there are way too many immigrants in Canada.
well, it's making it hard for everybody. Like access to healthcare. I mean, that's a concern for most people. Like again, we go back to that story we just talked about, that Winnipeg man that died in the waiting room. I mean, if you can't, it's not that great. You have free healthcare if you can't access it.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, we have to remember that almost everybody that comes to Canada from another country comes here to improve their standard of living, really. At bottom line, that's usually the case. And they're not stupid, just like normal Canadians, average, Canadians. They know that if you introduce millions of people in a short period of time, the standard of living will decline. So obviously they're against that. But for a long time, there's been this assumption that they're going to be so pro-migrant because they're migrants themselves, but that is not the case.
So this Donald Trump trolling continues, and then some people starting to think it's a real threat. Obviously, an economic threat. Um, like people are wondering, is he actually kidding? Ben Shapiro had a tweet out there saying, "We won't take you over if you find a real prime minister to run the country."
Well, if the most likely next prime minister, Pierre Poilievre, if he is going to become prime minister, Trump wasn't particularly complimentary of him yesterday. He just sort of dismissed him, said he doesn't care what Poilievre says. He even said that he might lose the election.
Hmm.
So I'm not so sure. But it seems to me that he's trying to reframe the debate, isn't he, Trump? He's trying to reframe the negotiation, and he's trying to say to Canada's elite, he's trying to say your option isn't between a good deal or a bad deal. Your option is between a bad deal for you or losing your sovereignty. Those are the options. But you know, the the thing is, if he was actually serious, he would have appointed somebody, wouldn't he? He's appointed lots of people to do lots of things, like to look after the border. He's appointed people to go and try and get the hostages out of Israel. He's appointed all these people for these special tasks, but he's not appointed somebody, to go and annex Canada, and he's not got like a committee or anything. He's not that serious about it.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
just
I mean,
talk at the minute, isn't it?
he has a couple of big things on his plate. He's promised to end the Ukraine war by January 20th, and now he's like the Hamas thing. He says he's made some pretty bold claims there too, that there'll be hell to pay, and and he reiterated that yesterday. So he's got a few uh, uh, fronts that he's got to fight in the next few days here.
Yeah, I would say it's probably a bit more serious about Greenland, but again, that could just be an attempt to get the Europeans to pull their thumbs out of their behinds and
Mhm.
actually spend some money on aircraft and ships and so on.
Um, And a shelter director urges public to have empathy for a mother who abandoned her baby in the cold. Um, Imagine a
Yeah,
lot of people have a lot of sympathy for that, right? It was a homeless woman.
it's a really awful story that, and I mean, it's always awful when this happens. It does happen from time to time, but I mean, I think the thing that's particularly horrible about this is that the baby, was left in, Trois
Mhm.
Rivières on New Year's Day when it would have been minus, God knows what, -10 or something like that. It's kind of that's the shocking thing I think about this particular one.
Sad, very, very sad. And the man accused of killing Goudreau and his brother pleads not guilty in the drunk driving charge. I mean,
Yeah,
that really.
apparently he was offered a plea deal
Mhm.
um, of 35 years in prison, and I suppose it's understandable that he would have said no to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, now it's going to be a not guilty plea.
And then this is big news. It's been out there before. It's been talked about before. Sam Altman of ChatGPT says he did not rape his sister. There's been a lawsuit filed. And he says the claims are utterly untrue. And this kind of surfaced when he was fired from ChatGPT, and then all the staff quit, and then he was quickly rehired, and then they fired the board of directors.
Yeah, there's like there's a bit of a sort of dark cloud that follows Sam Altman around, isn't there? And he clearly has quite a lot of enemies. Um, and it, but obviously he's very vehemently denied these claims from his sister, and he also said that she's unwell. Um, that she's like I can't remember the exact term that he used, but that she's sort of like mentally unwell, has mental challenges or something like that. And then he goes on to claim as well that he's been giving her a lot of money and he offered to buy her a house and all sorts of things, but she just kept trying to get more money from him. But yeah, it's a little bit sordid, isn't it? This kind of thing, but it's just another day in America. Really, they love a good lawsuit.
And morning coffee may lower your risk of heart disease, research says. And coffee, obviously, the prices are up recently. I only drink coffee during my workout. I used to drink it all day long, 5, 6 cups a day. Now I drink only during my workouts.
Yeah, I mean, I only have it in the morning as well. I mean, I once knew a chap at university who lived near me in the student accommodation, and he would really late at night, sort of like midnight or something, when we would all go to bed, he'd be sat there with a coffee, and I always thought that was that was so bizarre. I'm gonna have to send this study to him to make sure he stops. But yeah, the study is that it can disrupt your circadian rhythms and mess around with your melatonin and all kinds of things.
Yeah, I used to drink a few of those Americanos a day, and you'd almost be wired. Like it just so hard to like focus even, right? It was like you were just
Yeah,
kind of like high on coffee.
I think it's like usually the advice is not to take any caffeine after about sort of like 2 or 3 p.m.,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because that's kind of so you give yourself a huge sort of like barrier so that your body can wind down and you can get ready for sleep.
Yeah. Let's move on to markets. Gold continues to chop, as we were saying, so it's looking for that catalyst, whether to go higher or lower. But it's tightening up in that band. It's kind of tightening up there, but it is up this morning, $17 it was. And crypto again went to that 100,000, over the 100,000 mark, and then wrenching again, again chopping in that range again, looking for that probably that January 20th moment to see if it can find some direction upward. But again, wind in its sails for sure, right? Building a good base at that 100,000, or in just underneath the $100,000 mark.
I
Canadian
assume
dollar,
there are lots of people making money as well with those peaks and troughs every time it goes up and down.
yeah, you bet. Canadian dollar, it did pop a little bit, but it's settling back down. I think like this prorogation prorogation of Parliament, definitely not putting any confidence back in the Canadian dollar. So Canada needs direction. It needs a leader. It needs a mandate for sure.
Needs a captain for the ship as it heads towards an iceberg, you might
It
say.
sure does. It 100% does. Yeah, that is the. And then NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA had some big announcements at their keynote, and they're introducing a personal AI supercomputer. So there you go. You can get a NVIDIA supercomputer. Probably a lot of people are going to want that. But lots of stuff going on at the CES. And then I did see the Zeekr EV not available for sale in Canada and the US. And I have a video there. I don't know if Rommel can show us that video. The back seat in the Zeekr. This is a luxury vehicle. No, not that video, but well, we can just go on. We can go on to that if you want, Rommel. We can play that. We just play that video at full screen there, and I'll just talk about something. So the CES is going on right now here in Las Vegas, the Consumer Electronics Show. It's just massive amounts of people and tradespeople. You have to be either in media or a creator or in the trades, the trade profession here, and that's the electronics area to be at this show. But people from all around the world at the CES. Some really cool things that I've seen so far after day one. I'm going back there here right after this. Some stuff in robotics, lots of robots out there, actually, tons and tons of robots. Um, but we just talked a little bit about that Zeekr. That Zeekr van there, it's the most luxurious thing I've seen. We'll see if we can get to that video later. The back seat, it doesn't look into the front. It's like closed off like a limo. And there's probably like a 45, 50-inch screen in the back and fully reclinable back seats with massage and heat and everything. Like a real executive bus, I guess, a small bus. Look at the amount of people, though, that you can see that, and just the stream of people. It's wall to wall people, right? Like there's just a ton of people there. Lots of technology, like just wild amounts of technology there. There's TVs that look 3D when you're just looking at their flat screen, but they seem to pop out at you, like this one right here we're looking at. Pretty impressive. Um, Lots of interesting sound stuff there too. That you're seeing this from TCL. Um, uh, I rode on a suitcase, so I'll show you that later. There's suitcases for the airport there that you can actually ride on. They're electric, and you can move around. Here's one of the autonomous vehicles there. Oh, this is Rommel's trying to show us this now. This is the back of the Zeekr here. So there's the seats, and then like that massive screen there. Yeah, you can get rid
So
of
what's
that
that,
one.
3 seats?
There's two seats in the back, just two seats in the
Right.
back. Yeah, just yeah, lots of stuff from the home, like smart appliances. Obviously, tons of smart appliances. If you can go back to full screen, Rommel, that'd be good. Take me off the screen so people can see it there. Look at that thing. That is just crazy. Lots of clear screens that you can, like, when you turn it on, then turns into a television. Lots of robots, like lots of robotic arms, lots of robots making coffee, and some realistic robots. I did talk to one person there for a while, that they can change the face of the robot in, like, I think it was like in a minute. They can change the look of the person, and it's full full body robots too. That he says right now could take. This is a robot here that can make coffee.
In the
So,
morning only.
well, I mean, this is a commercial application for a coffee maker, right? That replaced the barista.
Wow.
So there you go.
No more tips for being handed a coffee.
Or maybe the robot wants a tip.
It can have a gigabyte of hard drive space as a tip
Or
as
maybe
a
the robot reaches into your bank account and helps itself to a tip. Yeah, maybe just cleans out your bank account and says, "Thank you. Here's your coffee." Lots of
It's
really
very
cool stuff.
interesting though to see the earlier on as well. It seemed to be making some kind of metal or something. It was like the arm that was
Yeah, no, a
polishing
lot.
something like that. That could well be the future of manufacturing, couldn't it? I mean, it's hardly an original comment that I'm making there, but
Yeah,
when you see things like that, it looks so real.
you can take that off the screen now, Romo. We did when we did the Level Up AI Summit. There's a company out of Salmon Arm. that uses robotics and vision-based robotics to pick mushrooms. But at the show, there was one there that can pick any kind of fruit and vegetable that's mobile. The one in the mushroom picker is in a rack. This one is a mobile vehicle that goes into pick strawberries and all kinds of stuff. It does pruning, and it does like picking out some of the bad flowers and stuff like that. And it also then picks the fruit. So, and it's mobile in the fields. Very
Well,
interesting.
that could put an end to all these scandals involving migrant workers one day, maybe in the future.
And then our meme, Linda Yaccarino spoke yesterday at the X, Linda Yaccarino of X spoke at the CES, and I did put that on my LinkedIn too. You can go watch that keynote from her. But this is from the New York Times, and it says it's a real headline. Meta says fact checkers were the problem. Fact checkers say that's false.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to actually see if that is true. But that is that really yeah, that is true. I've just found it online.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm not. I'm
That's
not kidding. I
unbelievable.
watched them react because they all got fired, and they're mad they got fired, and a lot of them were former CNN employees and that. So
It's the verb that does it for me. Rule. Fact check is rule. It's like, okay, my lord. Now that you've ruled, you can't possibly be wrong.
it's funny. Meta says fact checkers were the problem. Fact checkers ruled that false.
I mean, as journalists, we sometimes write headlines like that, and we're being a little bit cheeky. And, for example, like that what we talked about earlier, where immigrants say Canada has too many immigrants. That was basically the headline. That's kind of like cheeky. And you do
Yeah,
that a little bit knowing that that's kind of you've used the same word in an interesting, maybe slightly arch way. And yet the New York Times, I don't know, have they written this and laughed? Or have they written this and been self-righteous as they usually are? I would love to know because this is like a headline that I would write as a journalist if I wanted to be cheeky and have a laugh. I would write a headline like that, as if like, look how silly this is, and I'm going to put that in a headline so you can laugh at it alongside me. But I don't know. With the New York Times, you never know, do you, if they're being for real?
I think that's the fact checker of this last 5 years. I mean, sorry, the headline of the last 5 years, and it says so much, right?
Yeah, it does. It's like they should print that off forthwith and stick that in the, Smithsonian or something like that. Get it in the museum right now because that that really sums up our era, doesn't it? It's it's
It sure does,
brilliant.
especially the last 5 years, right? Especially the last 5 years. I think that is because Zuckerberg did not have nice words to say about the Biden administration. Say basically they were told what to do and they buckled under it. And then
Yeah. Well, it's
the
the
fact
COVID
checker,
era. I think it goes back to the COVID era, and so much trust in institutions was just like set on fire so recklessly during that era. And I still think back to the craziest one of all is uh, don't buy or wear masks because there's no point. The science shows that they're pointless. And then 2 weeks later, get a mask, wear a mask, or we're coming for you. And it's kind of,
but
that
not.
moment I think that's gonna stick in people's minds forever. I think that.
And it wasn't just one mask. It was Fauci wearing like five at one time. Like it was.
When the cameras were on, yeah, and then he had them
Yeah,
off
and then
after.
as soon as the cameras were off, then they pulled it off, right? So, and then we've seen the same thing with Bonnie Henry at a hockey game. She had it pulled it up for the cameras, and then when the camera was off, she pulled it down.
Yeah. And then who went to bat? Well, that's wrong actually. They didn't just go to bat for um, the people that made declarations like that about masks. They actually went and enforced it brutally. And Facebook was one of the primary enforcers during that whole era, where they banned people and they also forbid people from even talking about studies that proved that wearing a mask was a stupid idea and didn't achieve nothing. They they
Yeah,
would they actively censored discussion of valid science. So I mean, it is very interesting that Zuckerberg's come out and said this, but I mean, I feel like maybe getting on his knees and kissing the ground and begging forgiveness would also be an idea because he was one of the main sort of participants in that deranged
that's
period of our history.
funny. You should say that on my LinkedIn when I posted Zuckerberg's um, dialogue there. Many people said exactly what you're saying. Like forgiveness shouldn't come that easy.
Yeah, and I wonder as well what Trump reckons of that, because obviously he was personally affected by Zuckerberg's complicity in that whole authoritarian moment in Western history there.
I'm of the mind that we need to move forward. That if people are willing to move forward with you, that we should move forward because we can't change the past no matter what we do. But we can sure put in rules and laws and stuff that say that this can never happen again. And I think that's what Daniel Smith is doing in Alberta right now. And I think that's the more productive way to do it. But if somebody's willing to move forward, then I think we should move forward with them.
Yeah, that seems fair enough, but I would just um, with Zuckerberg and people like Zuckerberg, I think it would be important to maybe keep your eye on him, because he does seem to kind of change direction when the wind blows in that direction. So, if it went back to the sort of authoritarianism that we saw a few years ago, I have a feeling that Mr. Zuckerberg might change his tune again. So it's
Well,
people like that that you need to
uh,
be vigilant about.
the odd one is that he put Dana White on his board of directors. I
Yeah,
know
he's
that.
just doing everything he can really to ingratiate himself into the new movement. I mean, I say that for all we know, it is a genuine transformation. I mean, who can really say? But it certainly looks a little bit opportunistic, and that I'm sure even he would acknowledge that.
Well, I'm going to look at it positively and take it as it is genuine and authentic. So let's hope for the best, right? Because we definitely could use some truth and honesty and a better path to a better tomorrow.
Yeah, and again, just to say something like on that side, on the positive side, when he first started out, Zuckerberg, it is true, and he mentioned this. It is true that he was um, in favor of freedom of speech and free expression, and he did actually believe in those things, just like everybody else back in the old days of the internet. It was very much about liberty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The people that can remember the older internet will know that it was very much about freedom, and that was Zuckerberg's attitude as well. And then he changed his tune when he started to walk around wearing a suit and become friends with senators and so on.
Yes, 100%. Definitely, we need just a more positive path forward. We need an election here in Canada. We need to let Canadians speak, and we need to kind of like throw off this economic threat that's coming from south of the border here.
Yeah, well, no country in history has ever been able to succeed when they've been at war with themselves and had no leader. So I mean, it's as clear as day, and I think that it's essentially impossible to make the opposite argument. I think I don't think there is an opposing argument that stands. So I would
Well,
say almost everybody in Canada should want that and probably does want that.
yeah, I would agree with you there. And with that said, I'm off back to the CES, and we do thank you for watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news, we live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you